All right, YouTube. Donald Trump has won the Republican nomination. I called it before Indiana, said Indiana's primary was essentially irrelevant. Now it's super irrelevant, of course. Cruz dropped out last night. Kasich wanted to stick it in, decided not to. He also gave probably the most depressing concession speech I've ever heard. Typically a little bit boring and emotional, but also just very depressed in general. And he quickly left the second that it was over. He didn't even wait for the applause to begin before he turned on his heel and walked out. So he obviously, I think he really didn't want to let go. I really think he actually wanted to stay in, if only for the free buffets or whatever. But now it's time for the Republicans, I'm not one of them, but it's time for the GOP, if they have any sense, to start thinking long and hard about potential VP and cabinet slots. And by Republican Party, I essentially mean Trump, because he managed to destroy a whole host of Republicans who were already part of the sort of accepted core of the Republican Party. Populism, so the sort of the nativistic line, was pretty far out there and pretty limited up until now. It seeped into other aspects of the Republican Party but had no real spokesperson. So you've got the conservatives, or so-called conservatives, they're really just neocons and evangelicals, that in many cases they still swear up and down they won't back Trump. A lot of them will come around to him, others won't. But here's my thoughts. Many, many months ago I said, the only person in the race who would make an acceptable vice president for Donald Trump was John Kasich. I still believe that out of all of the people that have been in the camp, I don't think it would be a Rubio, a senator sort of. I don't think it'd be a Cruz. I think that John Kasich, if anybody who had been running was chosen, it would be John Kasich. I would put Rand Paul a distant second, and nobody else, I would say, would be a possible fit in any way. And here's why. I said months ago, the person should be they should have political experience. Kasich, has decades of political experience stretching back to the Reagan administration, so you can't ignore that. He is quiet. He's low-key. That is, he can't upstage Trump. He obviously can't go one-to-one with Trump in a debate. That's important. The VP contender, because Trump markets and brands himself, because his most diehard fans, the ones that really you need to keep fired up, see him as sort of a strongman, a charismatic figure, it would be unacceptable for Trump to choose somebody like Rubio, even if he has a call with Rubio and says, yeah, I'm fine, you're fine, we're on good terms now, and we're glad to have you aboard the Trump train. He's not going to choose him, I don't think, if he's wise, as his vice presidential nominee. Because Marco Rubio is a good public speaker and can get fired up. Even if he goes haywire, he can get fired up. Let's admit, he may be robotic, he may have difficulty winging it, but he is a decent speaker. Ted Cruz, not so much. He comes off as the stump preacher or the used car salesman. Kasich can upstage him mentally. That's point number one. He has political experience, point number two. And number three, he's in a swing state and he's popular in a swing state. These three things I pointed out, I think it was like 6 months ago, as the best possible major qualifications Trump could look for in a vice presidential figure. Kasich fulfills them all. Now, he may decide, well, because of the epic slapfest that the GOP's nomination devolved into at times, it wouldn't be appropriate for Trump to choose anybody who had been running. In which case, I think still it will be a governor from a swing state or a state that leans red or blue, something that's in play at least. It wouldn't, if he's smart, it wouldn't be Chris Christie. In other words, it wouldn't be the governor of New Jersey, which is why I say Christie. Some people have him up there with Kasich in terms of likelihood. I think that would be a huge tactical error. By the way, you see him starting in on Hillary just today, laying the groundwork for his future campaign. He's also trying to destroy the Democratic Party because he knows. Here's another thing. Really quickly before I get back into the VP thing, I've got to let people know this. I know exactly what Trump is doing on his Twitter right now as we speak regarding Bernie Sanders. He doesn't actually care about Bernie Sanders. Let's not kid ourselves. These people saying, oh, maybe he'll take Bernie on as a vice presidential candidate. You can make an argument for Jim Webb, okay? Jim Webb is probably the only person not in the GOP that I can foresee any possibility Trump would actually nominate. By the way, Jim Webb, other than Kasich, would probably be the best choice, arguably, for political reasons. He doesn't care about Bernie Sanders. No, he's not going to have him as vice president. That ship sailed, many, many months ago before I even thought Trump was a shoo-in. We're talking pre-Super Tuesday. No, it won't be Sanders. What he's doing is he realizes Hillary's won. So he's attacking the Democratic system and trying to drive Bernie's voters away from the Hillary camp, because then who are they going to vote for? They're going to vote for Donald Trump in many cases, because they'll think back and they'll say, Trump warned us it was rigged. We knew it. Inside, they know it's rigged. Trump has just justified what they've said. And so all of a sudden you have a Republican that's not even liked by many other Republicans telling them that the Democratic primary system's rigged. It's obvious what he's doing. It's genius. I haven't seen any other candidate that I can ever remember do this. It's kind of an obvious thing to try to do. He's openly sowing discord among the Democrats, and it's working to some extent. Bernie will lose. Hillary will win. Trump's camp, which correctly predicted they'd get over 1,400, he will now because he's running unopposed. Let's give him credit for their strategy, for their foresight, and assume that they generally know that Hillary's a shoo-in for the Democratic nomination. You may not like that. I know there are some Bernie fans left on my channel. I feel your pain because Bernie Sanders is better than Hillary, let's face it, but he's going to lose, almost certainly. Back to the VP issue, though. I think that Kasich would be the top choice of anyone who's run. Otherwise, he's going to go, the second choice would be any other governor, popular governor, from a swing state. I don't think Rick Scott, for obvious reasons. He did endorse Trump, but he's not he's an extremely divisive figure. If you've ever been in Florida and watched, I was in Florida, I believe, during the last round of elections. And he's extremely divisive within Florida. Yes, he's there. He won the election. But was he a shoo-in? Is he terribly well received even by some Republicans in his state? Not necessarily. It would not be a winning strategy to get independents on board the Trump train in Florida. I think that would be a mistake. Kasich would be a far more solid bet. He's seen as less partisan. He was seen as above the fray, and thus, there weren't as many insults. Nobody really attacked him because they saw him as meaningless. He did win Ohio. Quite handily. He's popular in Ohio. He's done a good job there. He bowed out with grace. He knew when to quit. People think that's to his credit, I would generally believe. So yes, Kasich would be number one. Any other governor in a similar situation other than, again, Rick Scott. People said, Scott Walker. Not going to happen. Absolutely not going to happen. And it'd be a mistake, too. That would lose him the election. Other than those two, yes, any other random swing or leaning blue or red state would be a good choice, a governor, or even a lieutenant governor, or a former governor, a popular former governor who left for, personal reasons. I wanted to spend more time with the grandkids, but now the grandkids are, getting up in their teens, and all they want to do is go drive out to the mall or something. That would be a good choice, too. Rand Paul, I would say, because Trump has already, in the absence of Rand Paul, Trump was already gobbling up a lot of the self-identified libertarians within the GOP. Now, are they what I would call libertarians? No, they lean libertarian on a few issues. They don't care about gay marriage, or they're not too comfortable with the drug war, or any combination of one or two other things. Doesn't make them libertarians. It makes them kind of more libertarian than the neocons are. But if he really wants to hammer it home and grab these people up at greater numbers, and, by the way, add more youth appeal, he should consider Rand Paul, who's probably the only congressional figure that I can think of that would actually have enough visibility, have a lot of grassroots and a lot of youth support that really could seal the deal for Trump in a general election. If he wants to go the safe route, it should be Kasich. If he wants to go I want a low-key vice presidential figure here who will not upstage me, who people, if people think about the possibility of me keeling over, it won't scare them to think about this person becoming the next president of the United States, should that happen. That the image of the vice president is mainly important for that reason. Essentially, the person has to be competent enough to go one round of debating with whoever Hillary chooses. As far as tactics go, that's really all they have to do. Everything else that they do, they hold a few little rallies here and there, talk to the press once in a while. That's basically the job description. What really matters, we saw this with Palin. There were people, I am sure of it because I heard from them, who did not vote for John McCain, not because they liked Obama. Many of them didn't even see a problem with the Bush era. But they avoided supporting McCain because he chose a running mate who was seen as inexperienced and off-kilter. She was seen as nuts. And she went rogue, and she proved that fear, that she was nuts. People saw her as completely and utterly bereft of any qualification to be the president. Well, she wasn't running to, she was just running to be VP. But if the president dies or is incapacitated or suddenly goes nuts or something, the vice president becomes the president. That was a problem with Palin for obvious reasons. Whereas John Kasich, deservingly or undeservingly, you can say what you want about his ideas and policies, but he's seen as a safe person. He's seen as quiet, low-key, he doesn't bicker all the time. He kind of looks like, if you were to hire an actor to play a vice president, it would probably look a lot like John Kasich. Well, there you go. He has every qualification Trump could ask for. Again, second to that would be Rand, if it's someone who's been running. Otherwise, he's going to have to go to some other swing or leaning state, find a governor, a former governor, someone with executive experience. It would be more likely to be someone with executive experience, but that is a major point. It should be somebody from politics. It shouldn't be somebody. It wouldn't be a Carly Fiorina, somebody with no political experience at all. That might add to the hype and hysteria that is the Trump movement. That may help him with his fans, but is it going to win over people who, at the end of the day, are a little more pragmatic independents? I think not. So I think Kasich would be literally the top of the list as far as who Trump may choose for that position. He says before July he will before the convention he will be choosing. I would say Kasich probably got a call not long after he dropped out. Hey, I hope we're in good graces here. I want your endorsement. I want you on the team. I want you to be visible, and there's probably something in it for you, if not a vice presidential ticket. At the very least, he would make, arguably, he could make a good Secretary of State or something like that. You would want him to be high profile. You wouldn't want him to have to attack anyone, to be in many skirmishes, but you would want him to be there to sound like a reasonable voice. Ben Carson would be another person who fits that description. Someone who seems stable and quiet and doesn't threaten others in the capacity that you've put them in. Of course, if you put Ben Carson in as vice presidential candidate, people would be worried that we're going to return to the burning times or something, because it's obvious that he's a religious zealot. But put him in health and human services or something, people say, okay, well, that's fine. It's a peripheral role, and he can get trot. He can talk to the media once in a blue moon and be quiet and well-spoken, and it'll work just fine. So that's what Trump needs to think about. The Never Trump movement's dead. There are still people like Ben Shapiro, Glenn Beck, who claim they'll never back Trump. That's fine. My hazard to them would be, don't bother trying to join the Libertarian Party, because all of you are complete authoritarians. You're more authoritarian than the person that has disenfranchised you from the GOP. Trump is less authoritarian than somebody like Ben Shapiro, who thinks that we need to send $1 trillion more over to Israel, and we need to protect their borders while opening ours to anybody that happens to want to come into the country. That's really a concern the alt-right has properly addressed. I think the problem being, of course, people like Shapiro, they're ingratiated to the mainstream media. Trump's talked about that too. But as far as Bernie goes, that's propaganda. It's working. It's effective. It's manipulative, but it's effective propaganda. But let's not kid ourselves. He's not aiming to drag Bernie Sanders, a socialist who's been primarying with the Democrats since the 1970s, over into a Republican ticket. He wouldn't accept it even if it was offered to him. He'd say, "What the hell are you? Were you just in Colorado? Were you in Washington State? Were you here in Vermont? Is that where you got your weed from?" Honestly, if Trump were to ask him to do that. So Clinton is there's like a 99% chance Clinton will be the one he's contending against. As far as on the Republican side, you can dream up whatever wild scenario you want to. Oh, Mitt Romney from behind, all unpledged delegates go to him. It's not going to happen. Trump's the nominee. He's not the presumptive nominee. He's the nominee. You don't even really, all you have to do is hold the convention. He wins on the first ballot. He's got it. Whoever his VP is will come on there and they'll be dancing around and laughing and so forth. That's what's going to happen. No, there will be no magic bullet there's no RNC rule involved that can stop him because he's running unopposed. He's going into the rest of these states. He'll be over 1,400. He gets every delegate from California. I think that puts him above 1237 right there. And that doesn't even mention West Virginia, New Jersey, New Mexico, Montana, Nebraska, Washington State, Oregon, all of the unpledged delegates that'll pile aboard because there's no one else to vote for after the first ballot anyway. The unbound delegates will all vote for him. They're not going to waste their time voting for someone who's not running anymore. It's clear the GOP has unified. How far it unifies matters. As far as whether they beat Hillary or not, I'd give them pretty good odds of destroying her. And very, very good odds of at least winning the general election. I think there's like a 90% chance they'll win the general. There's like maybe at this point a 60% chance they do it in a landslide with Trump as the person leading the party because the paradigm shift has already come. It's already here. Hillary's having trouble beating a socialist. Trump has just curb stomped the last two people that were standing in his way and is now running unopposed. By the way, to people months ago who told me it can't be done, it'll never happen, the RNC will stop him, Jeb from behind, Romney will run, Paul Ryan will get in there somehow. I had one person claiming Ben Carson would win right up until he dropped out. Rubio's going to do it. Rubio will become the establishment pick. Then Ted Cruz will become the establishment pick. I had thousands and thousands of people telling me I was wrong every step of the way. But by the time of Nevada, I said Trump is now likely to carry this through. After Super Tuesday, I said it is now very, very likely that he will be the nominee, and I was told that I was wrong. After New Hampshire, I said that it was possible he'd become the nominee, which nobody apparently picked up on until at least Nevada. They were, weeks late on that one. Even as recently as like New York, the eve of New York voting, people were telling me somehow some other person is going to take it away from Trump. You were wrong. I was right. I was right about almost all of the states up until now. In fact, the number of states I got wrong roughly doubles, because originally I said Montana and Nebraska would be Cruz states. Well, Cruz is no longer in the running, so that changes things a little bit. That's unforeseen. I didn't predict that Cruz would drop out. Kasich, I would have said, well, maybe he'll just stay in for the food. Cruz, I expected to be stubborn, but again, after Indiana, how could he actually do that? I mean, when the money dries up, the only person who could continue self-funding is Trump, because he's just loaning his campaign $100 million. He doesn't have anything to fucking worry about. Everyone else was relying upon donors. Well, if you lose the race and no one thinks you can win, who's going to donate to your campaign? A few grassroots contributions. Cruz got to the point where on the night of, in Indiana, he was talking about, at the very least, they're going to do massive staff cuts. They're going to have a skeleton crew staff left. Well, therefore, the writing was on the wall the second that his campaign announced that fact. Because even if he had won, if he had cut down his staff like that, the Never Trump thing wouldn't have worked in any state. I mean, Cruz probably still would have lost, like Nebraska or something. But now Trump gets it all. He gets all of the unpledged delegates, or very almost all. You might see a few protest votes for some other candidate. He gets all of those almost. He gets all remaining pledged delegates in every state because nobody else is running. So he'll hit 80, 90% of the vote. People will still cast it. There'll still be people who pretend to be never Trump. They'll vote for Cruz. They'll vote for, I mean, there's still people that vote for Jeb Bush, even though he hasn't been in the running for months. So that'll happen. And yes, this is a Vermont beer. By the way, Vermont showed a great deal of common sense. Trump won here, narrowly though, over Kasich. Well, there you go. That shows that if he picks Kasich as a VP, a large proportion of Vermont Republicans, they have no problem with that. And a lot of independents as well. Remember, it's an open primary. So yes, Trump has won. Clinton is almost certainly going to win. It's like a 99.9% chance. Kasich would make a good VP. Glenn Beck was wrong. Ben Shapiro was wrong. Megyn Kelly was wrong. Bill O'Reilly. Sean Hannity, until at least Super Tuesday, was wrong. Nate Silver was wrong. They were all wrong. Larry Sabato was wrong. And I was right. Well, I'm going to pat myself on the back a little bit for that. I think that I deserve at least some credit. Yeah, so it was a good time. And now that both candidates are out, it's like, well, I hope I don't hear any more goofy conspiracy theories about how Trump is going to lose, because the writing was really on the wall almost by Super Tuesday. At least by the time Arizona and Utah came around, it was pretty clear the way the race was going to go. After New York and then the slew of 5 states thereafter, it was obvious the race had already been decided. India, a lot of people had to wait and see because they listened to the media. Here's the problem. People were basing their estimates on like what the media said, on what Karl Rove dragged out with his whiteboard. That's not the way to do things. Indiana did not matter. Trump could have gotten 0 votes in the state. He'd still be the nominee of the Republican Party. He still would have hit 1237. Krauthammer right now is crying into his 4th martini of the night. So yes, most of the talking heads and pundits on TV, and I spoke about this, I think, more than a month ago, about how the reason why these idiots were wrong, they're not from the same, they don't understand the concept of the internet, what it's done to the human mind and human culture. Well, those of us who are more fluent with the internet, we do understand that. We understand Twitter and YouTube and Facebook and so forth, 4chan and Reddit and everything else, and how they work, how they affect people, how things are organized nowadays. And Trump was the only person campaigning that actually took advantage of that. That's why he won. It had less to do even with his message than how he delivered it. That's about all. Peace out.